Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L, and hey, coming in with the now bi-weekly Q&A because I missed last week's Q&A. It's okay. I apologize for it. It's just last week was not the best week for me, and you might have seen it on the channel because uploads stopped for like 3 or 4 days. So yeah, it's just that happened. But now I'm here. We're gonna go through the questions and answers for this week. And unfortunately this week we only have really 2 people asking questions, and that's not too bad. Things happen. I do want to say though, TGC, I know you're asking those questions, and I know you're asking those questions, so I have more to talk about in this video. So in that case, thank you very much, TGC. I appreciate your questions at the very least, and I like to know that you're still doing relatively well. Anyway, we're gonna go through the questions. So it's TGC and Rhiname the Weeb this week. Rhiname, you're a fixture for these videos. So we're gonna go through your question first, and honestly, don't worry about having to ask me about Hero Academia. And also, I believe you might have seen the other video that I did that touched a little bit on your question, but I'll answer your question here in full now. Anyway, I'm gonna zero in on the last half of your question pretty much, and I'll start by reading it out with: the fact that such an important part of a person's life is basically uncontrollable is pretty unfair in my opinion. He's referring to quirks here, which I think is intentional from Horikoshi. Perhaps giving people a degree of control of their situation isn't necessarily a bad thing, although it might be dangerous. I mostly want to hear your thoughts on the morality of interfering with someone's inherent nature, especially when it comes to granting extreme power, and whether or not Deku would have looked for alternative methods of gaining power had he never met All Might. So I'm gonna leave the Izuku part for last, but first on the morality of changing someone's inherent nature. The first thing that I'm gonna start this off by saying the whole part about an important part of a person's life being uncontrollable, being unfair. No, not really. And I think you might have touched on it because you say that you think this is intentional from Horikoshi, but a lot of parts of your life are not controllable, right? You can't control what skin color you're born with. You can't control what life-ending disease you're born with, if you have any. You can't control where you were born. You can't control what financial situation you were born into. You can't control what what sex you were born with. You can't control any brain differences that you were born with. And I had to be careful with that one because I was almost gonna say brain abnormalities, but everyone has some degree of an abnormal brain. It's just some people have more degrees of abnormality than others. Anyway, point is, you can't really control those aspects of your life. So I understand what you're saying by it being unfair, but it's fair in the sense that it's unfair for everyone given that they do not get to pick, right? It's not as if this is something that people can just decide unless medical science gets involved. But that's not the question. That's just something just to put that out there and what I think about that perspective. And then this segues into giving people a degree of control of their situation isn't necessarily a bad thing. No, giving people control of the situation is by itself rarely ever a bad thing. That's why when it comes to the morality of interfering with someone's inherent nature, I don't see a problem with it. The problem is the person who's giving the person the opportunity to make the change. There's nothing wrong with, as a doctor, you going in and listening to what the person wants and doing that for them and changing that for them if you have a power for it. The problem is when it's one for all doing it, because what happened with the one for all situation is that you have this person who is at a point of extreme power, and you have this other person who is at the mercy of the person with extreme power, or is, I guess, calling upon the person with extreme power to help them. Because you have this power differential here, because you have a person who is so down on their luck or just wants to change things about themselves, you have this problem where if you have a person who's so stuck in what they can't change and they are so desperate to have it changed, that person becomes really malleable when it comes to manipulation. And for One For All, that's really what he wanted here. You like pointed out, he gained trust and loyalty of the people around him, but if he was just doing this without expecting something in return, this would have been fine. But the fact of the matter is that he banked on people being willing to do things for him. He comes in and gives them a choice that they otherwise couldn't have. his mentality here would have been the kind of mentality where he gives the person the choice, maybe asks them for a favor, and then it would be in a situation where if they got caught or if they messed up and they told them like something like, I wouldn't have done this if it wasn't for you, and then he can just be like, no, I gave you a choice, you're the one that made the choice. The best way to manipulate someone is when you create a situation where they think they're the one making the choice, when they think they're the one in control of their actions. When you have that situation presented, you've pretty much won. So there's no problem with interfering with someone's inherent nature. The problem is the intention for the interference itself. And then you can see the problem there. It becomes, we can't thought police people to that degree, and All For One could always use that as defense. Okay, so segueing into the next part of your question, specifically about Izuku. Would Izuku have looked for alternative methods of gaining power? Yeah, he probably would have. Once he grew up a little bit, he probably would have. If he never met All Might, would he have gone for One For All? He might have been manipulated into it, but I think it's more likely he would have wised up to getting technology. Because really, when you think about it, a lot of heroes are pretty much crippled without technology. Stain, technically, like his technology is just pretty much tools and weaponry, so not really technology, but you get it. Also Night Eye. A lot of heroes have pretty underpowered quirks such that he kinda, like, he would have seen that if he had observed some of those heroes, he would have eventually figured out, like, yeah, I could probably get a gun and he could be a hero. Like, there's nothing stopping him, especially when we know there's people like Knuckle Duster in this world where he can realistically do things without using a quirk. Izuku would have been able to pull it off. It's just, it would have been a question of how, if Izuku had a series of significantly bad days, he might have gone down the One For All route by his own volition. But the chances of that happening, given how stubborn Izuku was at the beginning of the series, I think it's very unlikely. So Ryanime, I hope that answer like worked out for you. I hope you enjoyed it. And now we're going to go into TGC's more ridiculous question, and it's pretty much my opinion on these death battle matchups. Here we go. First one is Natsu and Grey versus Todoroki. Basically, you have to power down Natsu and Grey from the start of series Natsu and Grey. I think it would be a pretty even matchup. Well, there's a few other things. Todoroki has to consistently manage himself, and then Natsu and Grey, how well can they work together? Because if they're working together as well as they did at the beginning of the series, I think Todoroki might be able to win one out on them. But if they're working together really, really well, Todoroki might be in trouble. It really all depends on how much chaos Natsu and Grey are causing between themselves. Especially because Todoroki, if he figures out that those two are just having problems with each other, if he was to say hit Natsu with a block of ice, there's no way for Grey to tell that, or for Natsu to tell that that wasn't Grey, right? So if Todoroki gets smart about it, he could probably win out. Next up, Zoro versus Shinobi Warrior Sasuke. Well, Sasuke wins because One Piece characters are inherently weaker than the Naruto characters, especially Sasuke. Because with Zoro, there's a lot of flaws going into Zoro, between comic flaws and also just serious flaws. So it's like Zoro has horrible sense of direction. If he gets stuck in an illusion, he's done. We've seen that. Zoro can't fight his lack of sense of direction. Zoro is the kind of person who was caught by a shark when he fell into a lake. He didn't notice the shark coming, meaning he has not that great situational awareness that he can still be caught by things. Zoro can't trump major characters in One Piece. For instance, Doflamingo uses his birdcage. Zoro couldn't cut through it. Although Zoro can cut people who are second in line, Zoro has shown that he has problems dealing with certain degrees of supernatural force, that being the devil fruits. Of course, only the devil fruits of major characters, because if they're not a major characters, chances are Zoro can easily affect them. Then the One Piece characters as a whole have not shown any defense for mental abilities, and the biggest examples that have worked with Zoro include things like Perona's ghost power, where she's pretty much able to make Zoro super negative, right? So he has no mental defenses against it. And Haki itself, we've only been able to see Haki affect damage. Hockey can only affect damage reduction. We haven't seen it actually affect mental fortification for the person using the hockey. So because of that, if Zoro was to even look Sasuke in the eye, chances are Zoro's done. And that's where it starts and ends. And the thing is, Zoro's gonna end up looking at the guy in the eye, because Zoro's that kind of person. In terms of battle power, yeah, Zoro's pretty much wiped out. Apples versus bananas? Bananas, obviously. Deku versus Dan from Bakugan? Dan, obviously. Like, come on. He's using a monster that's in a ball. Now, the better question would have been Ash versus Dan, in which case that gets way more interesting. Harry Potter versus Suna? I don't think Harry is a very well-written character. I think he's just a kid that had things happen to him. And then I think Suna's better. I think Suna has a more significant story arc too. Harry's just kind of there. Ryuji versus Bakugo? I think I like Ryuji more. And Ryuji can take explosions to the face pretty often. I'm not sure if Bakugo can take lightning, but Ryuji survives a catastrophic amount of damage. Endeavor versus Ace? Ace wins because he can become fire. Can Endeavor... Is Endeavor hotter than the flames that Ace produces? Maybe blue flames can hurt Ace, but I think Ace has a significant advantage in this fight, especially being able to become fire. It's a big advantage. You versus the YouTube algorithm? I don't know. If I'm doing my shipper style, then yeah, I can totally win in the algorithm. But if I'm doing anything else, I'm pretty much screwed. The YouTube algorithm does not like me when I'm not doing shipping videos. Anyway, that's pretty much it for me, guys. That was the last little bit of questions. So for that death battle matchup, I can survive if I know the YouTube algorithm's weaknesses. And right now, the only weakness I know of is shipping, which is not great. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. And until next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.